Do you know
Yes,
the name
I
Laken
do.
Riley?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you do. Jose Ibarra murdered 22-year-old Laken Riley. He's an illegal alien monster from Venezuela, convicted of 10 charges. He was first arrested by the Biden administration that you stated that you support. Joe Biden for president, right? Proud Democrat, Governor Hochul. First arrested at the border and released by the Democrats that you support. Then, guess what? He made it to New York because the Biden administration flew illegals all over the country, and your state was one that accepted them. He lived at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Queens, an upscale hotel that was turned into an illegal alien shelter at the taxpayers' expense. $2 million a month went to this hotel. The second time he was arrested was in the state of New York for endangering a child. But he was released quickly before ICE could even issue a detainer, because you support those laws, Governor Hochul. Then he flew, get this is shocking. He flew from the state of New York to my home state in Georgia, and you all paid for it. Because, why? Because it was reticketing, and that was the little gift that you were giving my state by sending monsters there. Costs the state of New York $5 to $10 million a day to feed and house illegals. Are you smiling at me about this?
I'm not.
You look like you got quite a smile on your face.
No.
Because I can
The
tell
gentle
you,
lady
people,
will not.
This is my time, reclaiming my
I'm
time.
thinking about
attack the
parents.
witness.
Don't you dare
Don't attack the
smile
witness.
about the murder of
I'm
Laken
thinking about her
Riley.
parents.
The third
Don't
time,
question how I look.
Jose
My heart is
Ibarra,
breaking for her
my
parents.
time, Governor Hochul. The third time he was arrested was in the sanctuary city of Athens, another Democrat policy. And then he went on and attempted to rape Laken Riley and murdered her. He murdered her. Let me explain something to you. This little girl right here, she would be alive today if you weren't such a treasonous governor supporting sanctuary laws in the state of New York. This little girl would be alive today, and her mother very much would like for her to be alive. This is outrageous for anybody in this country to support for non-citizens to be able to come in our country, be able to travel wherever they want, and then make taxpayers pay to house them, feed them, and then give them a plane ticket after they had been arrested in their state. That's what you did. You are responsible for the murder of this little girl, Laken Riley. And the Department of Justice should prosecute you for her murder.
Objection. Objection.
I don't care how much you object.
Watch what just happened there, because what you're witnessing isn't simply a congressional hearing or even a garden-variety partisan food fight, but something far more dangerous and intoxicating and terrifying all at once. You're watching the actual mechanics of American fascism being road-tested in real time, with the performative cruelty dialed up to 11, and the epistemological collapse laid bare for anyone willing to see it. This hearing in the House Oversight Committee featured Marjorie Taylor Greene interrogating Democratic governors, including New York's Kathy Hochul, over immigration policies, and while the ostensible subject was sanctuary cities and the horrifying murder of Laken Riley, this is actually about the construction of scapegoats and the weaponization of grief and the deliberate erosion of truth itself in service of a nakedly authoritarian project that has moved from the margins to the very center of American political life. Jose Antonio Ibarra, a 26-year-old Venezuelan man who entered the United States illegally, was convicted on all 10 charges including felony murder and malice murder in Riley's death and sentenced to life in prison without parole on November 20, 2024. And that conviction matters. Justice was served in a court of law with evidence and due process, but Greene isn't interested in justice. She's interested in spectacle and in transforming individual tragedy into collective permission for mass cruelty. Let me be absolutely clear about what we're dealing with here, because the stakes could not be higher, and you need to understand that Republicans accuse these Democratic governors of bearing responsibility for deaths and abuse of people killed or assaulted by immigrants who entered the U.S. illegally, while the governors defended themselves by pointing out that immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility, not a state one. But this entire framing is diseased at its core because it rests on a foundational lie that has been debunked by every credible study and yet continues to circulate like a virus through our body politic. Since the 1960s, immigrants are 60% less likely to be incarcerated than U.S.-born people, according to Stanford economist Ran Abramitsky. And in Texas, undocumented immigrants were 37.1% less likely to be convicted of a crime than native-born citizens. And there is no correlation between undocumented people and a rise in crime, with investigations finding no link between undocumented immigrants and a rise in violent or property crime between 2007 and 2016. The data is overwhelming, it's conclusive, it's irrefutable, and yet Greene stands there holding up photographs and accusing a sitting governor of murder, while CNN itself notes that data reviewed by them suggests no significant connection between illegal immigration and violent crime. This disconnect between empirical reality and political performance isn't accidental, it's the entire point. This is textbook fascist methodology, and I don't use that term lightly or hyperbolically, because Trump's rally speeches contain what experts in political rhetoric, fascism, and immigration say is a strong echo of authoritarians and Nazi ideology, with statements that immigrants are the enemy from within, who are ruining the fabric of the country, calling them not people, not humans, animals who will rape, pillage, thieve, plunder, and kill American citizens, calling them stone-cold killers, monsters, vile animals, savages, and predators. Greene is operating directly from this playbook, taking an individual crime committed by one person and using it to dehumanize an entire population, and the mechanism is identical to what Umberto Eco described in his essential framework of fascist rhetoric, where you create a perpetual enemy who is simultaneously all-powerful and threatening civilization itself, while also being weak and inferior and deserving of elimination. Trump's rhetoric about immigrants poisoning the blood of the country and the GOP's embrace of great replacement theory is being met with enthusiasm or dangerous indifference by significant numbers of Americans, with more than a third of Trump's 2020 voters agreeing with the blood poisoning claim, and this should terrify you, because it reveals how successfully the right has mainstreamed explicitly Nazi talking points into everyday political discourse. But wait, because it gets worse, and you need to see the entire architecture of what's happening in that room. Greene told Hochul that this little girl right here would be alive today if you weren't such a treasonous governor supporting sanctuary laws, and that the Department of Justice should prosecute you for her murder. And this isn't hyperbole or heated rhetoric. This is an explicit call for the criminal prosecution of a political opponent for policy differences, using the language of treason, which carries with it the ultimate penalty. This is eliminationist rhetoric. This is the groundwork for political violence. This is how you normalize the idea that your opponents aren't just wrong, they're criminals who deserve prison or worse. And House Democrats called Trump a gangster and a dictator, while lambasting his decision to deploy National Guard troops and U.S. Marines to Los Angeles, because they recognize what's happening here. They see the authoritarian muscle being flexed in real time. Let's talk about sanctuary cities for a moment, because the entire discourse around them has been poisoned by deliberate misinformation, and you deserve to understand what they actually are and why they exist. A sanctuary city limits cooperation with civil immigration enforcement, with policies designed to support public safety and community trust, so residents feel safe accessing services such as schools, hospitals, and law enforcement. And sanctuary policies make communities safer because immigrants, including undocumented people, commit crimes at lower rates than native-born counterparts. And when sanctuary policies are in place, immigrants are more likely to report violent crimes rather than avoid the police. This isn't radical or dangerous. This is basic public safety common sense. Because when you terrorize entire communities and make them afraid to interact with law enforcement, you create conditions where actual criminals can operate with impunity because witnesses won't come forward. Studies on sanctuary cities have found that sanctuary policies either have no effect on crime, or that sanctuary cities have lower crime rates and stronger economies than comparable non-sanctuary cities, with one study in Urban Affairs Review finding sanctuary policy itself has no statistically meaningful effect on crime, and another study in Justice Quarterly finding that adoption of sanctuary policies reduced the robbery rate. And yet Greene sits there trafficking in conspiracy theories that Ibarra flew from New York to Georgia on what she implied was taxpayer-funded travel, constructing an elaborate narrative where democratic policies deliberately facilitate murder, where governors are complicit in killing American citizens, where the entire apparatus of blue state governance exists to import dangerous criminals. This is the great replacement theory. This is the paranoid fantasy that falsely asserts that a shadowy cabal of globalists, often supposed to be Jews, is opening the floodgates of immigration to purposefully erode the influence of white Americans, a racist conspiracy theory that has been mainstreamed by Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk, and high-ranking GOP politicians like Trump and Elise Stefanik, and it's now the official operating premise of congressional hearings. We have moved from the fringes to the center, from the fever swamps to the halls of power, and the normalization is nearly complete. Watch the emotional manipulation at work here because it's absolutely crucial to understanding the propaganda technique. Greene asked Hochul if she was smiling, saying, "You look like you've got quite a smile on your face," to which Hochul responded, "No, I'm thinking about her parents. Don't question how I look. My heart is breaking for her parents." And this is a classic authoritarian move where Greene positions herself as the guardian of emotional authenticity, the arbiter of appropriate grief, the one who truly cares about victims while her opponents are callous monsters who smile at murder. It's performative empathy weaponized as a cudgel. It's the transformation of tragedy into political theater, and it's designed to foreclose any possibility of rational policy discussion, because once you've accused someone of smiling at a murdered girl's photograph, you've moved beyond the realm of good faith disagreement into pure tribal warfare, where the only acceptable response is total capitulation. The hearing itself descended into chaos repeatedly because Chairman Comer told a Democratic member to just shut up after moments of back and forth yelling, with Greene saying Democrats can't follow the rules, can't follow the law, and the hearing took a brief recess. And this breakdown of basic decorum and parliamentary procedure is itself a feature, not a bug of the fascist playbook, because chaos creates space for strongman authority, disorder justifies crackdowns, and the inability to have coherent debate makes democratic deliberation impossible. They want the system to fail. They want institutions to collapse. They want Americans to lose faith in the very possibility of shared governance, because that opens the door to authoritarian solutions. Now let's address the policy substance here. Because the Laken Riley Act was signed into law by Trump on January 29, 2025, as the first bill of his second term, the act requires detention without bond of non-citizens who are arrested for charged with or admit to committing certain crimes, including theft, burglary, larceny, shoplifting, assault on a law enforcement officer, or any crime resulting in death or serious bodily injury, and allows states to sue the Department of Homeland Security for alleged failures in immigration enforcement. This represents a massive expansion of detention powers, a criminalization of essentially any contact with the legal system regardless of conviction, and a weapon for red states to use against federal immigration policy, and it passed with 12 Senate Democrats joining all Republicans and 46 House Democrats joining all Republicans to approve the final version, which tells you how thoroughly the Democratic establishment has capitulated to this xenophobic framing. This is where I need you to understand the systemic failure that's happening here. Because it's not enough to simply condemn Greene's theatrics, we have to grapple with the fact that President Biden in his State of the Union slipped into opposition tropes using illegal as a noun, which he later admitted regretting, and in an effort to expose GOP hypocrisy, he unwittingly affirmed Republicans and Trump as legitimate leaders on immigration, thereby undermining his broader argument for why MAGA Republicans have no business governing. When Democrats agree to fight on Republican terrain, when they accept the premise that immigration is primarily a crisis requiring enforcement and crackdown, when they chase polls showing that 28% of voters now rank immigration as the top problem, and 41% believe Republicans will do a better job handling immigration compared to 29% for Democrats, they validate the very framing that leads to hearings like this one, where governors are accused of murder. The playbook for resistance is clear, and it's been tested and we know it works because Trump's rhetoric about migrant caravans failed in 2018 and 2020 because Democrats refused to take the bait. They didn't come out with a bipartisan border security bill, thereby raising the salience of the issue and signaling that yes, this is a legitimate concern, and Republicans have the right ideas about it. But now we're in a different moment where a majority of Americans now support building a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, at 51% up from 41% in 2016, and nearly half of Americans support rounding up and deporting undocumented immigrants, even if it takes setting up encampments guarded by the U.S. military. And this represents a catastrophic rightward shift in public opinion manufactured through relentless fear-mongering and media amplification of anecdotal cases, disconnected from statistical reality. But here's what you need to hold on to like a lifeline, because it's the only thing that can save us from this nightmare. There are an estimated 8.3 million undocumented workers in the United States who collectively contribute nearly $23 billion in Social Security taxes each year. And these are people who fled violence and poverty and impossible circumstances, seeking exactly what our ancestors sought when they came to these shores. And they work jobs that keep our economy functioning. They pay taxes into systems they can't access. They raise children who will be Americans. And they commit fewer crimes than native-born citizens, according to literally every credible study ever conducted. Immigrants in the United States commit crimes at lower rates than the US-born population, and this reality of reduced criminality holds across immigrant groups including unauthorized immigrants, and has been demonstrated through research as well as findings from Texas, which tracks criminal arrests and convictions by immigration status, with a growing volume of research showing immigrants commit fewer crimes and don't raise crime rates in communities where they settle, with some studies indicating immigration can lower criminal activity, especially violent crime, in places with inclusive policies. The moral obscenity of what Greene did in that hearing room cannot be overstated because she took a family's unimaginable grief, with Riley's sister saying that seeing her parents' heartbreak is excruciating and she will never get closure over her sister's murder, describing themselves as a broken family of three, struggling to find out how to live through the silence and emptiness that her absence has left behind. And she weaponized that pain, she instrumentalized that suffering, she turned a daughter and sister and friend into a prop in her eliminationist campaign against millions of vulnerable people. And when Hochul was questioned over policies limiting cooperation with federal immigration authorities and responded that her heart is breaking for Riley's parents, that human acknowledgement of tragedy was treated as insufficient, as suspect, as evidence of complicity, because in the fascist imagination there is no space for complexity or nuance or competing goods, only the stark choice between total loyalty to the blood and soil mythology and treasonous collaboration with the enemy within. This hearing happened in June of 2025, which means we're now living in the Trump second administration that Attorney General Pamela Bondi has characterized as bringing litigation against sanctuary jurisdictions to eradicate these harmful policies, following Trump's executive order on protecting American communities from criminal aliens, and tensions are escalating with Trump having deployed National Guard and Marines to Los Angeles to safeguard federal buildings and ICE personnel, with California Governor Gavin Newsom accusing Trump of waging a war on the foundations of American democracy. We are watching in real time the deployment of military force against American cities, the transformation of immigration policy into a pretext for authoritarian power grabs, the construction of an emergency that justifies any level of state violence. The through line from Trump's first-term rhetoric to his second-term actions is absolutely straight, and it runs through hearings exactly like this one, where the groundwork was laid, where the Overton window was shifted, where eliminationist language was normalized. Trump has referred to opponents as vermin trying to destroy America, and claimed immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation with Hitlerian overtones that have not gone unnoticed. And yet the man who promises to be a dictator on day one leads the GOP primary by 50 points, with the horrifying conclusion being that there is plenty of appetite within the party for this sort of rhetoric, and it doesn't turn many people off. This is the crisis. This is the emergency. This is the thing that should keep you awake at night, not the manufactured panic about immigration, but the reality that an unbreakable plurality of the GOP explicitly wants fascism, with another 29% okay with it, as long as it doesn't directly affect them, and of the remaining 28% who don't like it, Trump's approval ratings suggest most will pull the lever for him anyway. When Greene invokes the specter of Ibarra living at the Crowne Plaza Hotel in Queens, an upscale hotel turned into an illegal alien shelter at taxpayers' expense costing $2 million a month, she's activating a very specific set of resentments that have nothing to do with fiscal responsibility and everything to do with status anxiety and racial hierarchy. The idea that undeserving others are receiving luxury accommodations while real Americans struggle, and this narrative requires erasing the actual conditions in these shelters, the trauma and uncertainty and precarity that migrants experience, the reality that providing temporary housing is both a humanitarian imperative and vastly cheaper than the alternatives. But facts don't matter in this discourse, only the emotional charge of the transgression, the visceral rage at perceived injustice, the channeling of economic insecurity into xenophobic scapegoating. The hearing's broader context matters enormously, because this nearly 8-hour hearing with Democratic governors Hochul, Pritzker, and Walz on sanctuary states gained prominence amid unrest in Los Angeles over Trump's deportation efforts, and each governor faced questions about their stances on working with the federal government on immigration, though politics overshadowed much of the hearing. And what you're seeing here is the construction of a two-tier system of governance, where Democratic states are treated as enemy territory, where elected governors are hauled before Congress to be harangued and accused of murder, where the basic principle of federalism is weaponized to destroy any possibility of resistance to federal overreach. Hochul said Trump's actions absolutely undermine the sovereignty of individual states, and she's right. This is the centralization of power. This is the destruction of checks and balances. This is authoritarianism happening in slow motion, and then all at once. I want you to sit with the staggering intellectual dishonesty of Republicans simultaneously claiming to defend federalism and states' rights, while demanding that blue states abandon their duly enacted policies and submit to federal immigration enforcement, simultaneously claiming to oppose government overreach, while calling for the prosecution of governors who exercise their constitutional authority, simultaneously claiming to care about crime while ignoring all data showing that their preferred policies would make communities less safe. There is no federal legal obligation for state and local jurisdictions to use their resources to help with immigration enforcement, but historically police and sheriffs have often voluntarily assisted ICE without even considering the legality or ramifications of their actions, and following widespread advocacy and federal court rulings that ICE detainers are problematic. Many jurisdictions have rightfully pulled back from this entanglement. The fact that Laken Riley's mother Allison Phillips stated she was grateful the law was passed doesn't make the policy just or effective, and while we must honor her grief and respect her pain, we also have to recognize that grief is being manipulated by cynical political actors who care nothing for justice and everything for power. The instrumentalization of victims is a core fascist technique, the idea that the suffering of some authorizes unlimited violence against others, that tragedy confers moral authority that cannot be questioned, that emotional intensity trumps empirical evidence, and we've seen this playbook deployed over and over again throughout history with predictably horrific results. Here's what resistance looks like in this moment, and it requires courage and moral clarity, and an absolute refusal to accept the right's framing. We must state loudly and repeatedly that immigrants of all legal statuses commit crimes at lower rates than those who were born in the United States. We must defend sanctuary policies as both morally right and empirically effective at promoting public safety. We must reject the entire architecture of dehumanization that treats human beings as invaders and monsters and vermin. We must connect immigration justice to every other struggle for liberation, and recognize that the targeting of migrants today lays groundwork for targeting other vulnerable populations tomorrow. Republican rhetoric grounded in lies is designed to create and embolden hate and racism as a divide-and-conquer strategy to evade responsibility for refusing to enact policies that address challenges of working people, and it portends a much deeper threat of fascism that undermines our humanity, and if not addressed will upend any semblance of democracy and put all Americans at risk. The road from Marjorie Taylor Greene holding up a photograph and accusing Kathy Hochul of murder to mass roundups and detention camps and deportation trains is shorter than you think. Immigrant advocacy organizations have warned that formalizing xenophobia and spreading misinformation and fear in the GOP platform will irreversibly destabilize American communities, separate families, and decimate the economy, with mass deportations as the centerpiece being modeled on Operation Wetback, which involved military-style roundups in Latino communities in the Southwest that often deported U.S. citizens of Mexican descent, along with foreign nationals. This is what they're planning. This is what they've openly announced. This is what hearings like this one are designed to normalize and accelerate. And every day that passes without massive coordinated resistance is another day closer to catastrophe. What you witnessed in that clip wasn't just political theater or partisan bickering, but the actual operation of fascist machinery in the heart of American government, the normalization of eliminations rhetoric, the weaponization of grief, the transformation of policy differences into criminal conspiracies, the construction of scapegoats who can be blamed for every social ill and targeted with unlimited state violence. And the most terrifying part is how many Americans will watch that performance and feel satisfaction, feel vindication, feel that Greene is finally telling the truth and holding the guilty accountable, because the propaganda has been so effective and so relentless, and so emotionally resonant that millions of people have completely inverted reality and now believe the lie more firmly than they ever believed the truth. This is how democracies die. This is how fascism rises. This is how ordinary people become complicit in atrocities, and we're running out of time to stop it.